Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to speak to you about regenerative braking and how BMSs can cause untold problems. They can leave you stranded and having to repair your vehicle. Super Soco did something very clever. I don't think it was clever at the time, but then once I started to think about it, I then realised they did do something very clever. Their brake levers operate micro switches which then operate the rear brake light, and I couldn't understand if you make up a e-bike and you have a Vmoto controller which then comes with a display, and then you've got a BMS battery pack, or you have a circuit breaker and you decide to give it a little bit too much welly, or you decide to drain the actual pack down too far. If the circuit breaker trips out and you have the brake levers set up as regen, the battery's got too little voltage, then the battery will switch off. And if the battery switches off and you go, oh, my bike stopped going, car or something traffic decides to slow and stop, you've got to hit the brakes. And if you hit the brakes, the capacitors are still half or 3/4 full of power. The Vmoto's still switched on. The controller is still illuminated. And all what's happening is that your voltage gauge is just slowly going down. Then all of a sudden you hit the brakes. Regen kicks in, 15, 20 amps. It's got to go somewhere. And the biggest problem is, the battery's disconnected. The voltage goes through the roof. This fries. Vmoto's alright, but this fries. Then you can't switch the Vmoto back on. If you're like me, you come along and the original Super Soco controller, and you put your Vmoto in, and I have the left hand brake, so the rear brake set up as regen. Hit that brake and your BMS has turned your battery off. And the voltage spikes and goes over 80 volt. Your Super Soco controller that you've been using as your speedo work has fried. It's gone in milliseconds because you put too much voltage through it. Because if you can't use the ampage, and then your instrument panel is gone. So Super Soco, by not allowing regenerative braking actually on the brakes, it's quite a clever move. It's not something that I'm going to adopt, but it's quite a clever move to make sure that they didn't get into this situation. They don't have regen on their bikes. Well, they have partial regen on their bikes. Yeah, it certainly avoids this problem. I know about this problem from e-bikes, so consequently my Super Soco battery still runs with its BMS. I run with battery voltage always there, and I keep an eye on it a lot. I check all the cells on my battery. I have a second battery pack, and the second battery pack has no BMS on it. It does have circuit breaker, but it has no BMS on it, so I don't have this problem and I have run out of fuel, and I've had to well, I didn't have to operate with a front brake only because of half the battery pack just died because the BMS turned off, and then the other half, which has more ampage in it compared to the Super Soco, that was left on, so the regen had somewhere to go. But by having one brake as regen and one brake as non-regen, you can always stop without having a problem. But yeah, it's BMSs. They can be a problem. They're a godsend, and I'm not suggesting you should run without a BMS. I think you should, unless you are going to manually keep an eye on those batteries, you can so easily within 5 or 10 seconds ruin a battery pack. But it's you've got to be so careful. I went with a massive battery pack so that I could make sure that I can get from one journey to another journey without any problems. the only reason why I ran out of power was because I let somebody have a test drive on my bike and they went for miles, and then the next day I needed to use the bike and I couldn't fill it up. I only had 85% of my 68 ampere battery pack, and I just ran out. I was enjoying the drive too much and giving it the beans, and thought I would get home, and ran out. Had to dump it on the side of the road. But luckily for me, the missus was at home, and I had some spare battery packs. I'll show you. I had these, right, and they're only good for a mile or two. But I was so close. I was a mile away from home, so I just connected them up, put a lot of sponge down, made sure that I stuck to 25 miles an hour, and it got me home, no problem at all. BMSs, are they our saviour, or can they cost us money? They can cost us a lot of money, and also they can save us a lot of money. Like I say, I just run with half with BMS and half without. I know how much ampage I'm pulling at any one time. That's the reason why I put the second battery pack in, because I didn't like the fact that 40 amps coming out of 9 cells is a lot of heat. Decided to put lots more cells alongside the 9 cells, and I don't have the problem with the heat, don't have a problem with too much power coming out, I don't have problems with regen going in. I'm well over spec'd for all of it. My range increased. BMSs, are they good or are they bad? If you've enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It just helps the channel out. And I hope this helps people.